What's a normal money habit that secretly ruins people financially? Story 1. Not budgeting for expenses that don't occur on a predictable schedule or don't happen every month. The timing of car repairs can be unpredictable, but you can't tell me no one could have possibly predicted your 10-year-old car needed $500 worth of work. Don't even get me started on people who think Christmas is a reason to dip into your emergency fund. The date is fixed every year. How does it come as a surprise every year? Story 2. People who refuse to set up their own retirement plan if their work doesn't offer it. The only way I got through to my friend was telling her to imagine working the same job she now had, very physically demanding when she was 70, and having to do it not for fun or extra pocket money but truly for a living. Sobered her right up. Story 3. I do budgeting for friends and coworkers. 1. IMO is not accounting for every dollar. Let's go to Wendy's for lunch or I'm getting takeout for dinner 3-7x a week. Fast $100 to $200 a week. Add in subscriptions and Amazon orders and you're talking easily a 1K a month not accounted for. Everyone had at least $600 a month in these categories and didn't know how they were mindlessly spending on a day-to-day. Story 4. Taking out a loan with a longer term so the payment is smaller. Not sure if that ruins people necessarily, but I have seen people trap themselves in some pretty bad vehicle loans this way. Story 5. One of the biggest ones is inconsistent spending and saving habits. My wife and I are guilty. This week we just didn't have the time to grocery shop. While we have dinners covered, our lunches are not. 60 to 70 each person this week. Atrocious. Story 6. This one is worth mentioning. My 2 rescue dogs cost more monthly than my Mercedes. Animals pets drain your bank account. Not saying it's a bad financial decision. I work with and love animals. However, make sure you are financially comfortable to spend at a minimum $250 a month to feed and bathe them plus whatever medication, regular blood work they need. Also expect 1,200 vet bills to be regular. Story 7. Underestimating upkeep. Especially on large purchases like homes and cars, people often mistake budgeting for just saving spending. But true budgeting also includes projecting out beyond the date of buying the thing. The higher priced item of these, the higher the ongoing maintenance for a myriad of reasons. If it's simply sized bigger than something cheaper, supporting upkeep like insurance will be more expensive. Also, if you go luxury level, maintenance parts are going to have luxury pricing as well. Story 8. Something that could be ruinous. Marrying and not discussing or combining finances. You're a team now. I know many couples where one doesn't have a clue about the others or their joint money. If things go bad or if one is irresponsible, it could ruin you. Story 9. Mr. Banker. How much house can I afford? Then buying a house for that amount. A few months and people realize they have no cash for furniture, kids' sports, or repairs on the car. Mr. Banker, how much car can I afford? Because they bought that big house in a fancy subdivision. All their neighbors have fancy cars in their driveways. Envy purchase. Mr. Banker, my credit card bills are out of hand because everything is so expensive out here in expensive house land. How can I consolidate this debt? I can add it to the house mortgage for 30 years. That's a deal. Bankruptcy declaration in 3, 2, 1. Story 10. Ick about ruin, but we have wasted a lot of money on alcohol. Drinking your money is such a waste. Storage lockers. I know it doesn't necessarily ruin people, but it's just throwing money away. IMO, I realize it's helpful for a few months while in the process of moving or whatever. But long term, if you don't need or use the stuff you have stored away, why do you hold on to it? Story 11. Getting a new car every few years. I know a couple that finance their cars, get new ones before they are paid off and roll the old loan into the new one. The debt is staggering. Edit spelling. Story 12. Payday loans. I have a friend who has a master's and a $120,000 a year job, borrowing $75,000 off my broke dash. Grade 8 part-time, $45,000 a year salary, because she got into a payday loan debt 20 years ago. I am by no means a money genius, but I will never do that. Story 13. Thinking about monthly payments when trying to determine if they can afford something or should buy something, e.g., thinking about $500 a month for a new car and not looking at the total purchase price or amount of interest you'll pay over the course of the loan. Story 14. Not having the proper savings accounts. Having a $100K in savings checking in a bank that pays you 0.2 interest as opposed to having that $100K in high-yield savings which pays 4 interest. For $1,000 is a lot more than $200. For some people the difference might pay off almost a year's worth of utilities. The other thing is anything with cars and vehicles. Car payments rather than buying a car outright. Also buying a new car every so many years and then just paying more payments on top of that. I had a friend who buys a new truck every couple years and when he trades it in he loses 15 to 20 grand every time on the trade. So really what he is doing is paying 20 grand every 2 or so years for a new truck. He doesn't understand that. Story 15. Not investing. So many people have thousands in a savings account thinking they're doing so well, but in reality they're hurting themselves and losing money to inflation. Story 16. Hiring servants to cook, clean and brew coffee for you. 6 a day on coffee is $2,000 a year, 8 a day on lunch is $3,000 a year, 15 a day on dinner is $5,000 a year. For a decade in your 20s, that's $100,000 plus interest. Story 17. Planning to save what's left over each month, which turns out to always be zero. Best move I ever did was starting to pay myself first by having a portion of my check go directly into a savings account at a different bank. Story 18. People seem to be obsessed with cars. Every 4 to 6 years they are dropping half their gross income on a depreciating asset because they need reliability. Cars are one of the largest inhibitors to financial growth. Story 19 by a mile buying new vehicles thinking they're a better deal than slightly used vehicles because they'll last longer, and then trading it in 3 years later to repeat the process. Story 20 I never understood this one. Folks who will go to a fancier grocery store to buy the exact same products, quality of produce, and brands that you can buy at a discounted grocery store equally close to your home. I started saving $50 a week for the same groceries when I stopped shopping at the local Kroger brand and opted to Winco instead. Story 21 Yesterday for my lunch I bought a sandwich from MS for $4.50. Today I bought 4 bread buns and a tub of sandwich filler from Lidl for $2.24. It's 7x cheaper to make my own lunch. Story 22 Eating out far too often. I know plenty of people that scoff at 20-month subscriptions but don't even think about spending that on a meal 3 to 6 times per week. Story 23 Financing cars that they can't afford and not paying their credit card bill in full every month are two of the biggest ones that I see that have been normalized. Story 24 I don't know about ruined, but I couldn't sleep well if I had a perpetual car payment. There are so many people I know make less money than me driving cars that cost a year's income. I prefer to have actual money in the bank rather than payments out my. Story 25 I had a nephew who was always broke but had a good job at the time and no bills. He lived with his grandparents. One time he called me for a ride home from work because his car had broken down and he couldn't afford to get it fixed. We stopped at the bank so he could cash his bi-weekly paycheck. Then he had me stop at a store so he could buy a new game. Then an auto sound shop where he bought a stereo setup for the car he couldn't afford to fix, and multiple other stops. I went along with doing all these stops because I was interested in where all his money went. By the time we got to his home he had spent the whole paycheck and had no money for the next 2 weeks. He said he got to spend extra since he didn't need to buy gas. He called me later to see if I could drive him back and forth to work for 2 weeks because he didn't have money to get his car fixed. I told him he did have money to get his car fixed but chose not to and that he would have to make other arrangements. Story 26 Maybe not ruin but Amazon. Too many people I know pay $15 to have the convenience of 2-day shipping, but then wind up buying things they don't really need. Shipping is usually free for 35 purchases, so I keep things in the cart until I reach free shipping and that helps me to be judicious on my purchases and take things out when I find them cheaper locally. And I get that it is nice to have when you have a busy household and you can't go to the store every day. I'm just speaking about the people who wind up spending more than they would have otherwise. Amazon is almost like another form of social media at this point. Always listening and they are very strategic on what they show you and it can become an addiction. Story 27 Buying a new car every time you pay off the old one. A friend of mine said, I love leasing cars. This way I get a new one every 3 years. He is 70 and is nowhere close to retiring. Story 28 Buying new cars and financing them, and then make it worse by upgrading before the first one is even close to being paid off. One of the fastest ways to lose money. Story 29 Not realizing that you don't need those smartwatch plan with phone carriers. 99,100 people don't need it, and I've seen people waste their money paying every month and they are not important enough or are never away from their phone to need that standalone smartwatch line. Story 30 Lifestyle creep. Life has its ups and downs and that includes your financial life. You might get laid off, get sick, or face a family emergency, your company could fail, or even your entire industry might collapse. If you don't live below your means, maintain an emergency fund, or can't cut back when times get tough, you face financial ruin. Story 31 Having a mental image of what they deserve and spending according to that, instead of according to what they can actually afford, it's irresponsible and frankly pretty egotistical. Why do you deserve a nice car but not those other people? They're trash and you're not because reasons. Story 32 Ruin is a loaded word. Life is about choices, sacrifices. Buy a used car with all cash. Well, you're giving up driving a new leased car, less modern car, more worry about repairs. These are choices, so it's not about ruining yourself financially, it's about trade-offs people are willing to make. One exception is paying for a subscription that is never used. That is a clear waste of money. Story 33 Perpetual car payments. Pay it off and drive it until it's costing you more to maintain than buying a new one. You don't have to drive a newish car all the time. Story 34 Holy. The number of people in this post that don't seem to understand that a solid 50 of people are living paycheck to paycheck. Bunch of people really in here like 50 of your check should go to savings. How do you not have 60,000 sitting in reserves? Holy, I make 60,000 a year where minimum wage is 15 hour. And I cannot afford to live by myself easily. You people need a reality check. Story 35 Financial advisor here. Most of my clients are people seeking good advice so I don't run into a lot of bad situations. But when I do it's almost always buying a house you can't afford and or having multiple car payments. A few others are very expensive Christmas budgets that drain savings and lavish vacations. If you can save 20 to 30 of your income, then have at it, you do you. But if you aren't able to save, then a house and cars shouldn't be in the budget. Story 36 Buying things just because they are on discount. Like sure, those shoes might be 20 off ATM but you wouldn't have been interested in them in the first place had they not. Story 37 Rent to own. Only poor people do like this, which is why they're poor. They end up paying 3 times the price for a couch that's worn out by the time they've paid it off and have to do it all over again. Also payday advances. The interest is shocking, and you can't get out of the cycle of borrowing because it's so expensive. It's a losing game. Story 38. One normal money habit that secretly ruins people financially is always paying the minimum on credit card balances. It might seem harmless at first, but if you're only paying the minimum, you're mostly covering interest rather than reducing the principal balance. Over time, this can lead to a debt cycle where you're paying off more in interest than you actually borrowed. Plus, it can hurt your credit score if you carry high balances relative to your credit limit. It's a small habit that feels manageable but can pile up and cause long-term financial stress. Making even slightly larger payments can save a lot of money and help you pay off the balance faster. Story 39. Honestly, the thing that's helped me the most is tracking my every expenditure. It's tedious, but you need to make an Excel spreadsheet with categories X food and subcategories X drinks, takeout, restaurant, grocery, and legit track where your money is going. Also important to add any investments and paychecks into this too. Over time you'll see it start to balance and it's very satisfying, but most importantly, it'll help you see where you're just being ridiculous and can easily cut down. Story 40. Using storage facilities long-term. They raise the rent as soon as they can. If you live out of state, try not to let them know that, otherwise they will raise the prices higher because they are counting on you to not be in a position to move your stuff out. If it can go into a storage facility, it likely isn't anything you need. You're much better off selling items and replacing them later. I've seen friends literally sink thousands upon thousands of dollars into storing that they didn't need or want but couldn't let go of it. And they couldn't afford these thousands of dollars, but it looks harmless spread out over monthly payments for years and years. Ultimately, they were usually ready to part with these things years later when moving into a new house with more storage, etc. They would opt to donate most of it because it no longer suited their lifestyle taste, etc. Edited for a typo of the they. Story 41. DoorDash, Uber Eats, caviar, etc. I can't believe how many of my friends come up with excuses as to why they need to order delivery versus picking up or, God forbid, make your own food. Story 42. New cars, they depreciate instantly, the payments on some are crazy high, and the interest rate can be really high. I once knew a guy, unsurprisingly a mega, who had a brand new C-Class Mercedes. Between the payment and insurance he was paying $1,300 a month. That's what I pay every month for my home loan. Story 43. Got in the black at 48, now 71, retired, living my best life, bag lunches, coffee from home, buy foodstuff on sale only, put 3 kids through college, mid-manager type who saved for long haul. Story 44. Not cooking enough at home and not comparing prices at the grocery store. My wife and I cook at home all the time. We replicate meals we've had in restaurants for a fraction of the cost. You can go to one store and buy chicken thighs, for example, for $99 a pound on sale, or spend $3 a pound on sale somewhere else. Since we've been doing this, we saved over $2,000 in the last year in just groceries. Also, renewable subscriptions to things you don't even use. Story 45. Virtually any sunk cost fallacy. In practice, people spend money on something that's not working out but can't walk away because of how much they've already spent. You see this on people trying to flip houses all the time. You might get your money back, but the insane amount of financial stress you'll go through probably won't make it worth it and could bankrupt you. Story 46. Honestly, car ownership in general. Think of how much extra disposable income we'd have if our cities were designed so you could get around walking, cycling, or via public transit, and didn't have to shell out thousands every year for car payments, gas, insurance, maintenance, etc. Story 47. Thinking it's wise to purchase items on sale or dine out because you have a discount coupon. As my late dad wisely noted after I charged a ton of money on clothes that were deeply discounted, too bad you ran out of money or you could have saved more. Story 48. I think the habit of buying a new car every 3 to 5 years is the single biggest destroyer of wealth in middle-class America. A current new car payment is what? $750 MO. Plenty of people spend that and don't even blink at replacing the car when it could last them 20 more years. Or they panic over a $1,000 repair bill that comes once when the $750 MO is never ending if they don't ever pay off a car, buy reasonable, maintain and repair what's needed, and drive it for 2 decades. Story 49. Free shipping for orders over X, and then most items are a few quid under the free shipping threshold. Instead of accepting the 3 shipping fee, for example, people add another item to unlock the free shipping and end up paying $40 more than they were planning to on the order. Not going to name names, but there's an energy drink company and a nutrition supplements company that does this, and it drives me up the wall. Story 50. Spending money before they make it. Going in debt is a killer. When I was little we were dirt poor but had no credit anywhere, so everything was cash only. My wife came from a more middle-class background. It took me having to show her why we do cash only in order for her to get why we need to stay out of debt and pay off cars and our home quickly. Story 51. Financing more for a vehicle than you can afford. On top of this, buying an unnecessarily large expensive vehicle, $60K truck that you commute to an office job in and only using it for truck stuff a couple times a year, or a giant SUV for your 3-person family. These payments kill you in the long term. Story 52. Working very hard to pay all your credit card minimum payments on time so that you have a high credit score so you can get a higher limit. Rinse and repeat. Congratulations. You've just won at a game that is a stone-cold loser. Story 53. Only paying interest payments on their credit cards. Living beyond their means. Regularly living off of credit, basically spending money that they don't even have. Story 54. Any addiction basically. Gambling, alcohol, drugs. Yes, it's becoming normal now. Hookers, brothels or massage parlors, etc. And these are the more common ones. Pets, people underestimate how quickly animal medical bills can stack up when a pet has something medically wrong with them. Particularly people who do not have savings or a lot of income may end up incurring hefty debts through loans or by not paying certain bills when they have to make a sudden decision on whether to let their pet pass away or for it to undergo medical intervention, which isn't always guaranteed to save that pet. In many countries other than the US where human healthcare is government paid, animal healthcare however isn't covered, and new pet owners tend to underestimate how steep veterinarian bills can be, lately more so with private equity buying out veterinary practices everywhere in Europe, boosting prices with 250. And even if the animal is healthy, the prices of animal food are often higher than people expect. A large dog, an example, can eat a lot. Edit here in the Netherlands, there has recently been discussions about whether laws need to be enacted which will set a maximum price for veterinary bills, as an increasing amount of pets face neglect due to people not being able to pay for a vet anymore. Chinese and American private equity companies have bought up almost every veterinary practice here. Story 55 Girl Math. Buying 2 items so you spend 70 to get free shipping instead of the 1 item that costs 30 with 5 shipping is not saving money. Buying 3 shirts for 50 is not better than 1 shirt for 30 when you only need 1. Story 56 My boss tells me if I could afford my current car payment, I can afford a new car payment. He's basically in perpetual debt forever and okay with it. Thing is, I have no current car payment, well, not until last month. Story 57 Financing new cars and trucks every few years, rolling the negative equity from the first into the next. Suddenly you end up owning a used Kia for $1,100 per month and your credit score is 580. Story 58 Not realizing that just because they can afford to buy something doesn't mean they can afford to own something. I used to have a sailboat, otherwise known as a hole in the water into which you pour money. There's a reason they say that the 2 best days of boat ownership are the day you buy it and the day you sell it. Story 59 1 Subscriptions instead of paying for things a la carte. Better to pay a little more upfront than pay monthly for something you barely use. Don't use forget to cancel. 2 Thinking that sales are actually a good deal. Reducing things from overinflated prices that no one's paying to the real market price is not a bargain. 3 Spending too much on big-ticket items like cars and houses. Should go minimalist on those until one's finances are fantastic. No debt, lots of investments. Story 60 Getting caught up in the woe is me mentality and not trying to invest or start building a portfolio. If you're willing to drop hundreds of dollars every month at Target, TJ Maxx, and Temu, you can invest. Story 61 Another one. Do not modify the bank SEER. Instead of getting that 6K wrap and 4K exhaust system and on your brand new whatever, put the 10K towards your loan first. Story 62 Buying and financing a new car just because the current car is paid off or you're tired of it. I've been guilty of this in my younger years. I've learned over the years that it's a huge money having a car payment. My current car has been paid off for 7 years and is 11 years old, and I have no desire to purchase a new one until this one is barely drivable. Story 63 Short-term thinking. I used to think day to day, week to week, month to month in terms of how much I had or whether something was affordable, but it's altogether more realistic to think of your finances on an annual basis. Budget properly for every conceivable expense that is likely to come your way in any financial year. Whatever's left over from your salary is what you get to enjoy. For me, helped me realize that the things I previously saw as a splurge were actually perfectly affordable. Story 64 Buying junk. Just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's a good buy. I hate how people buy something to save a few bucks, then it breaks and they have to buy it again. They've now spent more than they would have if they forked up the extra cash in the first place. There is a saying that rich people spend less money. It's the same for food. Junk food is cheaper, but you then spend more on health care. Story 65. Paying rent more than 1/13 of your monthly income. Driving a car more expensive than 1/14 of your annual salary. Spending 1/110 of your monthly income at eating outside. When there is a huge discount, buying something that is not in your need list, e.g. a new pairs of Snickers at Black Friday. Although your Snickers are perfectly fine, and most of all not organized home, if you don't know where your belongings are, you would buy the same thing again. Story 66 If you are fortunate enough to have a savings account, if with 100 or less in it, shop around for bank rates. BOA and the like are so big, they don't need incentivized to gain your business. Even their high-yield savings accounts are only at 1. We switched to Capital One and jumped to 3.9. Story 67 Spending way too much money on a wedding. Starting your lives together and immediately dropping tens of thousands and possibly going into debt. My wife and I just wanted to get married in a courthouse, but felt immense pressure from our moms to have a traditional wedding. We ended up spending around $10,000 if I recall correctly, and most of that was on a credit card. We were able to pay it off a year or so later, but I sure would have rather spent that $10K on a down payment for a house or something. Story 68 Spending money on things that aren't necessities. Think about if you need something versus if you want feel it might make your life more comfortable. Do you need that 100 ice maker, or are you just too lazy to use the cube trays? BC I know I'm debating heavily on that ice maker as we speak. Story 69 Not living within your means. Your parents most likely spent decades furnishing their home, but the kid is wanting everything the first day you move out, leaving tips for people just doing the job for we they applied, buying snacks when out. Story 70 Getting on the must drive a nice car payments treadmill. That shiny piece of means you're going to have to retire 10 years later. Leasing a car is renting it. Buy a modest car with a minimum of bells and whistles. then drive it, maintain it well and run it until the wheels fall off, then have the wheels fixed and drive it some more. Unless you are in a rusty car area with strict inspections, then every car is a time bomb and you are basically screwed. Story 71. Buying a cheap item you have to replace 3 times and spending more than you would have if you'd bought the higher quality item once. Not to mention the anxiety and frustration that comes from malfunctioning, cheap junk. Story 72. A lot people are ruined nowadays by buy now pay later payday loan, unsecured loan from moneylender starting May seems okay as amount is small monthly, but slowly it will accumulate. Story 73. I work in a clinic, and so we can't leave during the day. The majority of the assistants and technicians order takeout for lunch every single day. Sometimes they also send out for coffees even though we have a Kirin Siffy maker with supplied coffee refills. DoorDash once or twice a day. Every workday adds up to a tremendous amount of money over a year. Bringing a lunch from home and drinking coffee supplied by work would make them probably $3,000 more per year, invested over a career that is giving away hundreds of thousands of dollars at least. Once in a while may be necessary, but I can't believe how much they spend for the convenience of not packing a lunch.